But with a group, it gets more interesting because we can have weird permutations of this where like, okay, these three people have one group goal and then have individual, but the third person in that also has a group goal in another set, and each person you add multiplies the number of possible plans. Works, but it's really hard to figure out because now I got like 10% of my life and money is going to this goal, 20% is going to this, 40% is going to me, this one's going to the overarching. My brain starts hurting. It is possible. It takes a lot of work and a lot of planning. Now, if you are planning as a group, anything besides doing it single individual, you need to be thinking about some paperwork. Essentially what happens is when you're doing life and financial planning as a group, you're creating a business. And that document can be living, like we can change it over time, but we need to have that. You will most likely need to work with a lawyer on that because you want to make sure you're protected.
Welcome to the Childfree Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bree and Dr. J, Certified Financial Planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast. Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners. Today we're doing something we haven't done before. We're dropping 3 episodes. These episodes can be listened to together or separate, whatever resonates with you most. Each episode is going to cover something different. The first being how financial planning changes if you're a soloist. The second, how financial planning works as a couple. And 3, financial planning if you're in a group. Be sure to check out the episode that resonates with you most, or all 3. Enjoy!
Hey, Childfree Wealth listeners. We are back in our book club-ish, talking about my new book, The Childfree Guide to Life and Money. I hope by now you've ordered it. If not, go to your favorite bookstore. Gotta love the local bookstores if you can, or your library, and see if they can carry it. We're going to talk in this episode about financial planning as a group. Now, little clarity. Group does not matter if it's romantic or not. So this might be some poly groups, might be friend groups. Don't care about that part. But it's more about like what happens if we're going to do life or financial planning as a group. And it's interesting, in the child-free community, I hear a lot about people wanting to do kind of the golden girls living. A whole bunch of friends living together, doing life financial planning together. Awesome. It makes some challenges. So we're going to talk through this. Now, I will tell you, anyone that's lived in a group or had any type of romantic in a group knows communication is the key. Okay? You gotta be talking to each other. This is one of those that makes a challenge. Don't have to explain it to anyone that's been in the group, but just think about it. Communication and finances gets kind of messy. Got to make it an open discussion. So we talk about planning as a group. We have kind of 3 options. One is the whole group has the same financial plan. Now, by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be all the same financial account. Might be, but we're all in the same set of goals, same financial and life plan. Now, if you're doing that in a group, especially if we get more than 3, 4, 5 people, the odds that you're all going to be able to agree on exactly what you want to do as goals get pretty rough. It might be possible, and if you can get everybody on the same page and all do it together, awesome. We'll come back to how do you actually do that in a second. The second one is the second group is we're in a group, but we do all our finances individually. So this is roommates. Perfectly fine. In actuality, it's probably the easiest way to do life and financial planning as a group is we all each do our individual thing. Maybe we share some costs, but we're all on our own plan. Good thing is, pretty simple. The bad thing is, you don't necessarily have support of the group. The third one is some type of combination of yours, mine, and ours, where we have some group goals, we have some individual goals. Now, we use this with couples, and it's actually one of the harder ways to do it with couple, but with a group it gets more interesting because we can have weird permutations of this, where like, okay, these 3 people have one group goal and then have individual, but the third person in that also has a group goal in another set, or 4 people have this group goal and 2 don't, and like it gets interesting. In math, there's actually a factorial that happens here, and each person you add multiplies the number of possible plans. Works, but it's really hard to figure out, because now I got like 10% of my life and money is going to this goal, 20% is going to this, 40% is going to me, this one's going to the overarching. My brain starts hurting. It is possible. It takes a lot of work and a lot of planning. Now, if you are planning as a group, anything besides doing it single individual, you need to be thinking about some paperwork. Essentially what happens is when you're doing life and financial planning as a group, you're creating a business. Most states, very easy to actually create an LLC, limited liability corporation, so it literally can be a business. And that business ends up with a guiding document. That guiding document says, what happens if the group falls apart? What happens if somebody dies? What happens if somebody changes plans? How do we buy people out? Who owns what percentage? That might sound like overkill, but you gotta do it. You need to have some type of paperwork that says, here is our plan as a group. Here's how we're keeping track of it. Here's who committed to what. And that document can be living. Like, we can change it over time, but we need to have that. You will most likely need to work with a lawyer on that because you want to make sure you're protected. Anytime you're doing a partnership, they talk about the 5 Ds. I actually think about it as 6 in this case for child-free folks. And common ones, kind of what happens during divorce, disability, drugs, disinterest. These are the kind of normal ones. The one we add on for child-free people, D, is diapers. What happens if somebody decides they want to have a kid? Can they still live in the house? Do they have to move? I don't know. That's up to you. But that needs to be in the document. That way we know what happens if there's a problem and we got to break this apart. The other thing that happens with groups, really interesting discussions around estate planning. Now, I have some people with groups that what they do is each person will be executor, power of attorney for others in the group. I plan for you, you plan for me, and we kind of go through. Works for everybody but the last person in the group, okay? And usually a lot of the groups are similar-ish ages, so it can all go sideways pretty quick. But you need to make sure you have that document, because if you want to, have some member of your group be the one making decisions for you, if you don't have a piece of paper, when it comes to medical or financial or whatever, they're nobody. You need to make sure that's there. You also have to plan that for estate planning purposes. If I'm part of a group where there's 4 of us in the group and one of us dies, does my quarter of the house go to somebody outside the group, or does it go to the group? If it goes to somebody outside the group, can that person move in, or can they force sales? These are things you need to figure out. And I'm going to tell you, if you're doing financial planning or life planning as a group, you're going to need professional help. Financial planner, you're going to need some estate planning, you're going to need some lawyers, you're going to have to get some paper. Now, people go, oh, we're all good friends, we don't need all that or whatever. Something will go wrong. So I had somebody bought a house with some friends, and then I started talking about it. I said, hey, what happens if your friend just gets a new job and moves out? Can you buy the house from them? Well, yeah, we can do that. Okay, what percentage? At what rate? Are we all putting in for the improvements? What has happened? But let me take it a different way. So what happens if your friend gets hit by a bus? And by the way, I don't know why it's always hit by a bus, but just go with me. And your friend gets hit by a bus, and now you own a house with their parents. Can they kick you out? Can you still live there? What percentage do they own? How is the house titled? There's a lot of moving parts here. Now, I'll tell you, I have worked with groups and helped people through this, and the financial planning software doesn't do any group planning. We got to do this by hand. It gets interesting. Communication is the key. Then we have to get the paperwork, and we have to do that early, because what will happen is if we don't do that, something will go wrong. And then once something goes wrong and we don't have anything in writing, that whole group can be at risk.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Please let us know your thoughts wherever comments are available, or email us at media@childfreewealth.com. To stay up to date, find and follow Childfree Wealth on social media. If you're interested in working with us, learn more by visiting our website, childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.